What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today I'll be showing you more than 20 tips to improve your battery life on iOS 12. I get the question all the time on social media and in real life. People always ask me, how do I prevent battery drain? How do I get the most out of my battery? Why is it not lasting as long as it should? So in this video, I'll be sharing all of the tips and tricks I know to help make the most out of your iPhone or iPad's battery life on iOS 12 specifically. All right, so let's kick things off with the number one tip, the first tip that I give anybody that has a question about battery life, and that is disabling notifications for applications that you don't need notifications for. So if you get constant notifications on social media, if like from Instagram, if somebody likes your picture, if you get a retweet or a favorite on Twitter, those are notifications that you don't really need to know via a notification. So you should disable those. And the same goes for any type of game or just anything in general that you don't absolutely need a notification for. So obviously if you get a text message or a phone call, you're going to want the notifications for those, but you can see right here, stuff like Facebook, I don't need notifications for that. Fantasy football, I don't need notifications for that. Fortnite, I don't need notifications for that. And you can see I just completely customize the type of notification that I get for everything. So for instance, for mail, I don't want any kind of sound. I don't want any banners or notification center or lock screen notifications. All I want is a badge to show me how many emails I have. And like I said, you should go into each application specifically and set a specific type of notification you want. So like for instance, for YouTube, if somebody uploads a video, I may not want a banner or a lock screen notification or a sound for that, but I would like to see it at least in my notification center and possibly get a badge on the YouTube icon. So my main tip here is just to turn off notifications for applications like social media applications, games, anything that you don't absolutely need a notification for. The next tip is not something actionable that you can do, but it's something where you can actually look into where your battery life is going, and that is by visiting the newly redesigned battery section in your settings. So if you scroll down here, you can basically see what is using up most of your battery life. And this is great insight to have because this will show you, what's taking up the most battery, what you should cut down on, and really just a lot of details that is important for battery life. You can see I had a lot of activity here around 1 p.m. So if I click on that, I can see what was using the most battery life at that certain time in the day. And you can see it says 56% was on the home and lock screen. So that means at some time around 1 or 2 p.m., I had my home or lock screen on a lot. So maybe I just left the phone unlocked and it used up a lot of battery. So that is something insightful. So maybe now I'll turn on auto lock so I don't waste 56% of battery or use, that much usage from 2 to 3 p.m. actually shows it right there. So now I will know that since I used 56% of that activity was used on the home and lock screen, I'll know that maybe now I should turn on auto lock to maybe 5 minutes or so. So it's just insights like this in the battery section that you can really find out a lot of details about how you're using your phone and what's eating away at your battery. And speaking of sections inside of settings, the screen time section is also very, very valuable and very useful for finding out information on how you use your device and how it correlates with battery. So if we click on my phone right here, you can see this is where I've been using. I haven't really used my phone that much today. So for the last 7 days, you can see how much screen time I'm using, and it breaks it down by entertainment, social networking, and other. And you can see it shows clearly that YouTube is my most used application on this device. Now this isn't my daily driver, so I don't have too much usage on here, but you can see how many times you pick up your phone per day, the total pickups, notifications. You can see 107 notifications. And this is actually a good section to figure out, going back to the first tip, which notifications you should disable. So you can see Twitter had 88 notifications. So I should definitely turn those off. That was only on because I was testing out the group notifications for my iOS 12 review. But basically you can see what's getting the most notifications, and that is something that you should consider turning off. Again, going back to the very first tip I shared in this video. So yeah, screen time is very useful, and you can also use these features right here as well, like downtime. You can set limits for applications, and it's really just a great section to explore if you're interested in saving battery life. The next tip is to disable the automatic software updates, which is the new feature here in iOS 12. So if we go to settings, general software update, we should turn automatic updates off. This way you don't download and install a software update overnight when you maybe don't have enough battery. I mean, it won't really do it if you don't have 50% anyways, but it's still a good idea to keep this disabled. The next tip is another big one, and it has to do with emails. So if we go to our settings and passwords and accounts, fetch new data, you want to turn push off for this, and this is going to prevent any emails from getting pushed to your device, which means it's going to be constantly checking for emails time and time again. Especially if you get a lot of spam emails, you definitely should turn push off. And then you should also go down to fetch and either keep this on manually or hourly. Once again, this means that your iPhone will not be constantly fetching for new data, new emails, new whatever, and it's going to have to refresh manually. So basically, like for mail, if you go into the mail application, it's going to refresh just by going into the mail application. So you don't really need it to fetch. So this is a very important tip tip if you do get a lot of emails. Definitely keep fetch on manual or hourly at the worst, and then turn push off. The next tip is one that I have been preaching for years now, and people still don't seem to understand that killing applications is not good for battery life. When you kill your applications, that means that your phone is just going to have to use more power to pull that application back up the next time you want to open it. So it really makes no sense to kill your applications, especially since Apple is so good with RAM management and keeping these applications open in the background. There's really absolutely no reason to kill your applications. All it's going to do is drain your battery. Now, if you just don't like all of those cards being there, you can maybe kill your applications maybe like once or twice a month, if ever. So once again, this is a tip that I've been preaching forever, but it still seems like people don't understand. So in iOS 12, and you click on the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth, it doesn't actually completely disable them. You'll notice how it turns white, and you may think it's disabled if you just now got on iOS 12 from iOS 11, but they are not actually fully disabled. They are just temporarily disabled. So what you should do is go into settings and actually go into Wi-Fi and turn it off when you're not using it. And the same goes for Bluetooth. Go into Bluetooth and manually turn it off like so. And of course, this will save battery because your phone is not going to be constantly looking for Wi-Fi networks to connect to, and it's also not going to be looking for nearby Bluetooth devices. So definitely manually turn these off to preserve battery life. Another feature that does take a toll on your battery life is raise to wake. So if you go into settings, display and brightness, make sure raise to wake is disabled. This just means when your phone is laying flat down and you pick it up to look at it, it automatically wakes up. But the thing is, you may not always want to unlock your phone just because you pick it up and point it towards you. You may just be picking it up from a store and then you're going to leave, but it makes it, unlock. It wakes the device up. It doesn't unlock it, but it wakes the screen up and it uses that screen time, which will eventually eat away at battery. Raise to wake is not going to drain a ton of battery just because it's only going to wake the device up, the screen up on the lock screen. So it's not really going to take up too much battery, but over time it will, add up, and it will eventually, be a reason that your battery is not performing as well as it could be. Another big one that I've been preaching for a long time is to disable vibration. So go into settings, sounds and haptics, and disable vibrate on ring and also vibrate on silent. Vibrating is definitely something that does eat away at battery, and this has been proven for years because it has to use the motor inside of the phone to actually vibrate. So if you're going to keep vibrate on, at least just do vibrate on silent. This just makes the most sense. Vibrate on ring really makes absolutely no sense to have enabled. And me personally, I always have vibrate even on silent disabled, but it is up to you with what you want to enable. Just know that vibrating, no matter what, will eat away at battery. So if we go into our Siri and search settings, there are a couple things in here that will eat away at your battery. The number one thing is listen for Hey Siri. This is something that you want disabled unless you just use it like every single day. You're going to want this disabled because you don't want your iPhone constantly listening for this phrase. And sometimes you'll even say something that sounds like that phrase right there, but it won't actually be Hey Siri. Another thing that you should disable are all of these Siri suggestions right here in search and lookup and on the lock screen. What these are is if you go to the home screen and swipe down, these are the Siri suggestions right here. And unless you use these all the time, you should definitely disable this because it does eat away at battery. It uses up more resources in your phone to give you suggestions based on, applications that you use a lot and at certain times and things like that. So it's just using more resources by having these enabled. So there's really no point if you don't use them. Another tip is to turn off background app refresh. So if we go into settings, general background app refresh, you're going to want to turn this to either off or only on Wi-Fi. I'm going to turn this off just because I don't really care if applications refresh in the background. If I go into them, it's going to refresh anyways. So for instance, instead of opening up Twitter and it automatically showing the latest things, if I go into Twitter and wait maybe 2 or 3 seconds, I will have it refreshed right there. So for that reason, I don't need any type of background refresh enabled. And once again, it's pretty obvious as to how this does eat away at your battery. It is refreshing applications in the background, which of course is using Wi-Fi. It could be using cellular, and it's also, populating all of that data, which does take resources and battery life to do. Another tip is to either disable AirDrop or turn AirDrop to contacts only. So if we go into 3D Touch right here and we see our AirDrop is right here and my receiving is currently off, but I would either turn that off or to contacts only. And I would only keep it on contacts only if you find yourself AirDropping things a lot. I use AirDrop a ton, but I still keep receiving off even on my daily driver until it comes time to actually transfer something via AirDrop. Especially since I live with somebody that is a contact in my phone, so that means that it's constantly going to be, picking them up on AirDrop. The next tip is related to widgets, and this is just a tip where you need to be aware of which widgets you're using and which ones you need to maybe remove from the widgets panel. So for me, I have screen time. It's nice to see that up there and it doesn't eat away at too much battery, but you can see news will probably eat up a battery, and I don't really care about the news, so I should probably disable that. Same with the weather. If I want to know the weather, I will go into the weather application. I don't really need a widget for that. So I'm going to go to edit, and I am going to remove news. and I'm going to remove weather. And there we go. Now my widgets are not going to be constantly fetching for that data and using up battery life. So just be aware of your widget usage inside of the widget panel. The next tip is another big one, and this takes place inside of privacy, location services, and you may want to look into disabling location services. Unless you share your location with somebody in iMessage, you should turn this off. And if we go down to system services, significant locations, put in your Touch ID or Face ID if you need to, and turn this off. If you have this enabled, it's basically just going to be tracking you everywhere you go, and obviously that is going to be eating away at battery life. So definitely disable this. There's really no reason to have significant locations on, but if we go back, there is a reason to have location services on, just not if you don't use, Find My Location inside of iMessage. And also if we go back into system services and go down, you also want to disable all of the product improvement settings right here, and you could even disable some of these if you don't use these on a consistent basis. And me personally, I use all of these except for I don't really care about location-based alerts, I don't really care about Apple ads, and I don't really care about location-based suggestions. So I'm going to disable those three, but the other ones I will leave enabled since I do use those. So you're just going to have to tailor this to your actual usage and your liking on your phone. But it is definitely something very important that you should configure to save battery life. If you go into settings, general handoff, you should disable handoff if you do not actually use it. So for me, I actually use this because I do have multiple Apple products, I have multiple iPhones, I have an iMac and a MacBook as well. So handoff is actually useful for me. But if you don't actually have any other Apple products, or if you just don't use handoff in general, definitely disable this so it's not looking for those other devices. The next tip takes place inside of wallpaper. So for wallpapers, you want to avoid using any kind of live or dynamic wallpaper. You want to just stick to a still wallpaper for the background and also for your lock screen. And this should be pretty self-explanatory, especially for the live wallpapers. These just use a lot of CPU, and it doesn't really make any sense to do that because it will eat away at your battery. The next tip is to utilize low power mode when necessary. So if we go ahead and enable it here inside of our control center, you can see that it will disable mail fetch, background app refresh, automatic downloads, and some visual effects are reduced or disabled in low power mode. Continue. And a lot of those things we've actually already changed manually, but it is very useful to use this in addition to airplane mode when you're maybe traveling, or if you don't have signal, or just any time where you're really running low on battery, or you're just going to need your battery for a long time and you're not going to have a charger in sight. And as I just mentioned, you should also utilize airplane mode when necessary as well, especially when you are flying or when you're just in a remote area with bad signal and it's constantly going from 3G to 1 bar. It's just going to use a lot of data and also a lot of battery. So definitely utilize airplane mode when necessary. If we go into our settings, display and brightness, auto lock, we want to turn auto lock to never. So I use never just because I know I'm always going to lock my phone. I'm never going to leave my phone unlocked. But if you do think that you're going to leave your phone unlocked, at least have it on 5 minutes at the lowest. I mean, that is the maximum you can do here, but it just doesn't really make any sense to do like 30 seconds or a minute, because you maybe could be reading an article or some comments or something like that, and that's going to take you more than 30 seconds or a minute to read, and it really makes no sense to have your phone locked and you have to unlock it and use all that battery just to get back to where you were. So I would turn auto lock on either 5 minutes or never to prevent that from happening. And the final two tips are not going to be anything you change on your phone, but they're just going to be more practical and just really some advice that you should take into consideration. And the first one seems pretty obvious, but I see people not doing it all the time, and that's that you should charge your phone whenever it is convenient. Even if you're on 90% or if you're on 85%, plug your phone in, charge it when it's convenient, and you're going to thank yourself later when you can't charge your phone and you're only on like 5% battery. If my phone is not 95 to 100% and there is a charger nearby and I'm not doing anything and I know I'm going to be going out later, I will definitely hook my phone up and charge it just to get to 100% because I know I will thank myself later. And the final tip is to make sure your battery doesn't need replaced, and this mainly applies to older devices. And actually, if you go into settings, battery health, if your maximum capacity is low, like in the 80%, there could be something wrong with your battery. Now, I would not worry at the 90% range, but if it starts getting lower than that, that means that there is some wear on your battery and it could actually be dying before the percent actually hits 0. So this is something you should really only consider when you've tried everything and nothing is improving your battery life. Your battery still dies prematurely. You still don't, see the battery life that you feel like you should be getting. This is something you should check out and see if you need to get a new battery. You can take it to the Apple Store and they will replace your battery there. So there you have it, guys. Those are more than 20 tips to help improve the battery life on your iOS 12 device. Hope this video helped you out. If it did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to leave a comment down below with what your favorite tip is. What's something that you found saved you the most battery life on your device? Leave a comment down below and I'll definitely see what you guys have to say. And of course, you guys know me, I will also respond to some of the comments down below as well. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and check out my iOS 12 final review that is up in the cards and down in the description below. I will be unboxing and reviewing all of the new 2018 2018 iPhones later on as well, so stay tuned for those videos. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.